On the Woodpecker today, I'm gonna show you how I built those step stools. For my Christmas gifts this year, I decided to build some step stools, like the one I made for my cottage. It has several purposes. For instance, resting after a long walk, helping me to find hidden stuff on the top shelf, putting a mousetrap on the mezzanine. But most often, it's used as a stool to hold hot drinks while watching my favorite shows on TV. But before I begin, I need to make another pattern for the legs. That's because I'll be making stools with two different heights. I start by tracing a line on a piece of plywood. This is my reference for all my measurements from this center line. I start by marking the legs' tenons. Then I trace the interior arc and the exterior. When everything is traced, I can cut the straight line. The rest is cut with the bandsaw. When the pattern is fully cut, I just need to sand the exterior smooth. I just file the interior. The final touch is to put on 2 coats of varnish, so the double-sided tape will hold better. Now I need to make the curved patterns of the stools. But before making them, I'll try to explain it all as best as I can. You have to visualize it like if you're taking a router and routing a 1/4 inch wavy line. Now picture the red line as the center of the pattern. So if I use a collet and a straight bit, I can recut the line on another piece of wood. Let's have a closer look. I have a 3/4 inch collet, a 1/2 inch router bit, so between the collet and the bit I have a 1/8 gap. This tells me that I have to cut a 1/4 inch of the patterns. I start by cutting some random curves on a piece of plywood. When the cut is done, I sand one of the 2 pieces smooth. Then I screw the waist on the pattern. Next, I cut the 1/4 inch out of the pattern. I use the straight part of a straight 1/4 inch bit to rub on the pattern. Now that I have both patterns, I need to prepare the wood. The walnut board is too wide for my jointer, so I straighten it with a hand plane. From time to time, I check with a light to see if it's straight. I continue until the board is straight. When it's okay, I plane the other side with the thickness planer. I do that for all the pieces of wood required to make all the step stools. Then I cut the boards longer than I need using the table saw. Now I can use the pattern to trace the pieces. I cut them on the bandsaw. I stick the board on the pattern with double-sided tape, and with the help of the guide bushing, I route the pattern. My bit is not tall enough to go through, so I remove the rest on the router table from my table saw with a flush trim bit. Now both pieces fit perfectly. I just need to glue them together. I spread a thick coat of glue on both pieces and clamp everything. I need to repeat this for the 5 tops and the 10 legs. There's a bunch drying right now. The second curve is done the same way. I just need to wait for the glue to dry, and I cut another curve from a different place on the pattern. Then I route the pattern, flush trim the rest, and glue the pieces together. Now that I have all the pieces for all the step stools, I make them the same thickness by passing them through the thickness planner. To cut the top the right width, I build a cheap sled. I didn't want to waste time on this, so I screw a runner the width of my table saw slot. On the other side, I put a handle, a toggle clamp, and some non-slip bands. The first cut will become my cut guide. With the toggle clamp, I secure the top and I cut it. The other side is cut with the help of the rib fence. Then I cut all of them to the right length. Before going any further, I need to repair a mistake I made on the legs pattern. All the pieces have a thickness of 1.5 inches, but the pattern's tenons are 2 inches wide. I need to redrop both the tenons and the new curves. I cut the new shape on the scroll saw. Now I'm ready to drill the holes on the top pieces. I install my angle drilling platform at 15 degrees. I make sure it's at the right place and secure it. Then I lock the 2 stops for the holes. I check to see if everything is okay and drill the holes for the legs. Now I engrave my name on the bottom of each stool top. To do so, I use my pantograph. I build it with Matthias Wandel's plan from woodgears.ca. When I'm finished, I paint the bottom brown. When the paint is dry, I sand the bottom. I mix some epoxy and fill the engraving with it. My oldest pattern is damaged, so I use it to make myself a thicker one. Before cutting the pattern for the legs, I tilt my table saw blade at 15 degrees, like I did for the top holes, and cut the bottoms of the legs at an angle. After that, I can cut all the legs. When I have all the pieces cut, I can make the legs with a pattern bit. I had a small accident. A piece flew away while I was routing it. No sweat, I just cut the damaged part. Then, I stick a walnut leftover with double-sided tape on my sled and cut it straight. I just need to glue it back to the leg. The next morning, I reroute the leg. Then, I cut it at 15 degrees. I sand all the sides of the legs. To make the arch on the top piece, I use a beam compass on a piece of masonite. Cut it on the bandsaw and sand it. Now with my new pattern, I trace the curve on each end of all the tops. Cut them and sand them to the line. I need to remove the excess epoxy on my knife, so I use a card scraper. Then I route a round over on all the pieces. I sand the bottom of the stool. I finish with a linear sander. I repeat the same thing for the legs. For the legs to fit into the top, I need to sculpt round tenons on the top part. When the tenons are done, I cut slots on top of them. I make some walnut splines to be inserted in the slots. I spread glue on the holes and on the tenons. The stool just needs to be assembled now. Here, I made a mistake. I took it for granted that the legs would fit the top. And on top of it all, I was mallet happy. I ended up with a broken leg and a broken top. I need to reglue them. Afterwards, I check if all the legs fit inside their respective tops. Then, I glue them. I spread glue on the splines and hammer them down. I do all the rest of the step stools like this. When it's done, I just need to let the glue dry. The next morning, I cut the excess from the tenons. Then, I sand the top. Some tenons have issues. I put blue tape on the bottom of the tenon. I redo another batch of epoxy and fill the eyesore with it. I just need to wait another day. When the epoxy is dry, I remove the tape. I scrape the excess epoxy and resand the top. Because of the round over, I sand the sides with a pneumatic drum. I blow the dust away with compressed air. Then, I clean everything with water. This raises the wood grain, so when the water has dried, I lightly sand all the stools by hand. Again, I blow compressed air on them. I spray several coats of water-based varnish on them. I use the water-based finish because I want to keep the contrasting color of the different type of wood. Water-based finishes don't alter the color of the wood like oil does. I sand the finish in between coats. After, I stick felt under the legs. Here are the step stools I made as Christmas gift this year. They're not perfect, but I like them. One thing I can say, this is not a weekend project. Thanks for watching, and see you next time for another episode of the Woodpecker.